clock, brought to you by Hitman Absolution. Available November 20th. Black trunks for GSP. Red and white trunks for Condit. The right knee was the one that took the ACL damage. An injury that has finished careers in the past. Pushing forward early, George Rush St. Pierre. Condit loves to throw hands followed by a kick and then spin out of trouble like he did against Nick Diaz. George switched his stance for a moment there.
Yeah, he did, and that opens him up for that elliptical kick, which Carlos loves.
And George looks absolutely huge for this fight. This might be the biggest we've seen him, Joe.
Yeah, his legs especially. He's done
it looks like an NFL running back.
Yeah, a lot of strength and conditioning, which, by the way, before he was injured, he said he didn't do.
Well, I mentioned it earlier, Joe, and you wonder if we might not see the greatest George St. Pierre ever to be able to have the time away. Although off a bad injury, he has really worked diligently to make himself even more powerful.
Well, one of the things that we said, it's the most difficult thing to do is to maintain the highest levels, to maintain that focus and intensity. And sometimes when you step away, you can become refreshed. Carlos just landed a nice jab there, Mike.
He said that he might have lost a little fire, and this helped get him back. He looks for the first takedown of the night.
George is shooting, and he's got it down. He's got to be careful. Mission control here. Condit does not have the right arm trapped, though. As he goes for mission control here, he's really just kind of biding his time. He needs to control that right arm of George's in the form of an overhook before he really can effectively attack with that position.
Condit has not been submitted since 2006.
Armbar attempt by Condit, rolled out of it is George. But George has to be careful here because Carlos will attack.
George has not been defeated since 2007.
Carlos
the upset
is spinning
by Matt Serra.
Spinning towards his left. George is trying to pass now. Now he's in half guard.
He's halfway there, Joe.
Carlos has already shown that he's dangerous off his back bike. He regains guard. And George is trying to rough him up from the top here.
Condit does a nice job getting back to guard.
Yes, he does, but he's pulling on the head. And as George pulls on the head, it's called a can opener. It's a way to open up a guy's guard, but it opens you up for arm bars. As you commit to pulling on that head, if a guy's really nasty off his back, he can catch an arm bar from that position.
I like one of the pre-fight quotes going into this championship matchup. How do you rebuild the perfect fighting machine? It started with 5 months of rehab in Southern California as St. Pierre turns it up early. Where there was, George admitted, a dark time where he thought it might be over. But he persevered, and he's here tonight in top position.
See how he's pulling on that head there?
Yep.
Now this can open him up to an armbar, but it's a very small window. See it right there? The small window, man. And Carlos is going high with those legs. Remember how quickly Vitor Belfort snatched that armbar on John Jones. That's how quick it can happen.
Good pace by St. Pierre.
And don't think Carlos didn't know he was going to be in this position. I'm sure he's well prepared for this. And as George keeps reaching for that can opener.
Takes a look at the clock. Under a minute on the clock here in the first round. GSP 22-2. Overall 16-2 in the UFC. Looking to move to 10-2 in championship fights. Big right hand.
Good shots being landed by George.
He's being bullied here by George as he embraces the grind of this wrestling that is surpassed by no one in UFC history. To the body. Again, he looks at the clock. 15. Nice elbow.
Again, spinning for that armbar, and George counters.
Final seconds of the round.
Condit back to his feet. Cut, though.
Big round for the champion.
Condit's cut bad, Mike.
Condit on a 5-fight win streak. Keep an eye on the cut. There's that punch-punch kick combination that Condit loves.
Nothing there, though.
Nope.
Great defense by George. Nice jab by George.
George, a sensational striker as well. In fact, that is his base, is that full contact karate.
Easily moves away from those shots again.
I'm just amazed how big St. Pierre is right now.
He clipped him with the right hand there. George goes for the head kick.
That jab was so effective against Josh Koscheck.
Good right hand by George. You know what? Carlos is hesitating here, Mike. You see him thinking about pulling the trigger, and he doesn't. And then George does.
Well, you had said before he didn't mind being on his back. That's before he took an elbow over the right eye.
Well, you know, there's levels to everything. You can be confident off your back with certain people, and then you get a guy like George on top of you.
Man, he's headhunting too. The chant of GSP.
Carlos needs to gain George's respect, and backing up and employing the same strategy that he did in the Diaz fight is not going to get that.
George
Nice
said
stiff
many
jab.
years ago, Joe, he wants to be the man that brought MMA to a different level.
Good combo there by Carlos, though. Nice jab. Now he's opening up. This is what he's got to do. He's got to back George up a bit, and when he does, George is probably going to try to take him down. Nice shot to the body by Carlos. Now he's opening up. Oh, right. Beautiful timing with that right hand.
Up on his toes. Good movement by St. Pierre. Condit trying to steal this round back.
Condit's bleeding from the nose now as well.
That was that right hand counter a moment ago. Midway point of round two. Fight scheduled for 5 5-minute rounds.
One of the aspects of George St. Pierre's game that's lost on some people is the fact that because he's so good at wrestling, it makes everyone hesitate before they throw shots. And you're seeing that with Carlos. After being taken down that first round, he hesitates because he's worried about this. And immediately George passes into half guard and a hard elbow to the same cut. And it's opened up even more now. Now it's nasty.
St. Pierre holds wins over UFC champions Matt Serra, Matt Hughes twice, BJ Penn twice, and Sean Shirk. He's trying to take out the interim champion here tonight. And a big left hand.
He's got to be careful here, though. He's rolling. Carlos is rolling on that leg. He's got to sprawl.
Powering through it, St. Pierre. Carlos.
Man, look at all the blood on the canvas, yeah. Mike. This is getting to be a mess. That cut's horrible.
And it's going to make both men slippery. Make it extremely difficult for someone to finish this fight with a submission.
Well, not necessarily. It makes it easier with chokes.
With chokes, yes.
Big
if he can hold on,
there.
right?
Yeah. If you can get the back, sometimes it helps when a guy's bloody.
How about from the top, Joe?
No, not from the top. No, it's not going to help George. The only way it's going to help is if he gets his back. But if he does get his back,
slide under, right?
You can slide the arm under sometimes when the guy's protecting the chin. But it does make it more difficult for triangles and things along those lines.
Man, this is looking like Kenny Florian, Sean Shirk.
There he goes with elbows here. Elbows here from the bottom by Condit. And he's got to do more of those. He's got to get George's respect from the bottom here. And he can do that from the bottom. He's got a nice long reach. And he's very good at elbowing off of his back. And if he can cut George from this position and do some damage, he can sort of change the course of this fight.
Condit's up, but he eats a punch. Since late 2009, when Carlos joined Mike Winkeljohn full-time, he is undefeated. What a start to our main event.
Even more.
Round 3. Sold-out Bell Center in the hometown of GSP from the South Shore of Montreal, St. Isidore. But Condit from the bottom was able to cut St. Pierre.
Nice inside leg kick by George.
Spin.
Telegraphed.
Condit.
That's a leg kick!
Oh, he got him!
Hurt!
Condit with a big kick to the head! Condit swarming St. Pierre!
George is in big trouble!
Condit on top! The big head kick! Now to the body!
George is swollen up, Mike, badly. Carlos is gonna get his back. George is trying to get back up to his feet.
And you talked about being slippery, Joe.
Full guard now. And now it's Carlos's turn.
Look at the swelling on the forehead of St. Pierre.
Big elbows by Carlos Condit. George is trying to move here, Mike.
The shin to the forehead from Condit and another elbow. George is rocked. He's out, though. We got ourselves a fight, ladies and gentlemen. How good is this? We're all back to even now, Joe.
That might be more than even. I think he hurt George a lot more than George hurt him.
Big right hand by St. Pierre.
George
picks him up, throws him down. St. Pierre 3 for 3 on his takedowns. He's landed 1 in each round.
Carlos is trying to secure Kimura, going for the high guard here.
That's the hardest George St. Pierre has been hit since Matt Serra finished him many years ago.
Well, we don't know how badly he's hurt and what happens when he goes in between rounds. Carlos is rolling for the armbar here. There's still plenty of time in this round. This round's half over.
And we have the championship rounds ahead.
There's a big swelling over the right eye of George where that kick landed. And Carlos is targeting it now with punches. Carlos is going with the body triangle now from the guard, which is it limits your offense substantially, but it allows you to squeeze down on the guy's body, makes it hard for him to breathe, and he's not attacking with jiu-jitsu from his back anyway. He's like trying to hit with elbows and punches from the bottom.
St. Pierre, only the second Canadian to hold a UFC belt, the other being Carlos Newton in this same division. The Ronin. St. Pierre seems to have recovered here, Joe, and he's using his strength advantage again.
You know, it's hard to tell because they're on the ground. When you see how a guy moves standing up, it's a kind of a different thing when he's got to use his balance.
Condit trying to get up.
Back up to his feet. George has got his hands locked, though. Carlos is going for a ride. But Carlos is reaching down for the Kimura, so George has to be careful about that.
George looking for the high crotch.
See how Carlos has that locked up, Mike. And so because of that, that's keeping George from attacking. And George breaks it free and gets him down. You know, how do you score this round? Because George is on top pounding him, but I think Carlos did the most damage.
Well, the only times GSP has been defeated in his career, they were both first-round stoppages. And George St. Pierre is 9-0 in fights that go the distance.
Turning for that. Look at that. He almost sweeped him. Turning for that armbar.
Serra and Hughes with 1 second. left in the round back in 2004.
George steps over, and now he's in half guard again, Mike.
In what George called the most important fight of his life.
He's in half guard here, and he's triangling the leg. And see how he's doing that, Mike? That keeps Carlos from sneaking that leg out and going to full guard. But he's trying hard.
He had GSP in trouble early.
You know, how do you score this round? It's a very interesting round.
Control for GSP,
but
big shot for Condit. We are headed to the championship rounds.
Could really interfere with his vision.
And you see the bruise on the forehead. A hematoma coming on the right side of the forehead. 2 kicks thrown early by Condit.
Yeah,
round 4.
Condit can look at that and see his handiwork.
Switches his stance to southpaw. George landed 1 takedown in the first round.
And again, he got it.
Yeah.
That one snuck through again.
1 in the second and 2 in the third.
And George just lands one of his own.
Anderson Silva watching this fight very closely with Lyoto Machida. Both men earned UFC belts in 2006, but George lost his first defense against Sarah. Anderson with 10 total defenses. George got him on the ground again, turning the corner, side control. Side control for George. A 7th, Joe.
George's got to keep that right hip out. Yeah. Immediately, Carlos snuck that hip in and got the right knee into play, and now he's in half guard. George had that opportunity to stay in side control there. He lost it. George doesn't mind being on top in half guard, though. In fact, Randy Couture preferred being in half guard for ground and pound because of the fact that you could hold on to the guy's leg and keep him in position. For grappling, you know, for straight submissions, it's not a good position, but for control and ground and pound, it is.
Condit is no stranger to 5-round fights. He had the one recently with Nick Diaz, but he was scheduled for 5 5-minute rounds 5 times in the WEC. Never had to go the distance in those.
Good shots from the bottom by Carlos Condit here. I like how he's attacking from the bottom. He's making George work here. These are good shots. He's going under, he's going over, elbows, punches, constantly attacking, keeping 1 foot on the hip too, Mike. And George tried to step over that, which he did. But Carlos will push down on that knee and slide his right leg up and back, or left leg rather, up and back into play.
Condit said, GSP is the champ until I beat him. I am the placeholder. Huge advantage in top position for GSP.
This is the championship rounds of a grueling fight so far. George steps over again.
Carlos doing an amazing job, Joe. Every time GSP gets a half guard, he gets those hips back underneath and closes his full guard.
His guard's excellent. Now he goes mission control. Now this is good because he's got that arm pinned down. He got up, lost the position, trying to hold the arm. And George smartly turns away from it.
Uh-oh. Looking for the knee bar.
He's looking to hold on to that leg. George has got all his weight down on it, though. It's okay right now.
It's the left knee, not the right knee.
Triangle attempt here. George's got a posture up here.
And he's out. And there's where being slippery comes into play.
Certainly.
Under 2 on the clock in the 4th.
Also being trained well, so he understands what not to do in that situation.
Supernatural talent and athleticism helps, right?
That all helps. And being gorilla strong.
Yeah, the spider. Wonder what he's thinking with George being so big in this fight. The greatest of all time, Anderson Silva.
Carlos gets back to his feet. But George has his hands locked.
And that cut over the right eye of Condit, Joe.
Reversal by Condit.
Is open again in the blood going into the eyes of Condit, knee on belly.
Brilliant reversal by Condit. Oh, George almost reversed him, but he got stuck against the cage.
Right back down.
You know, the wrestling of George St. Pierre is just so sensational. It saves him in so many spots.
5 for 5 with his takedown.
He's just able to out-grapple guys consistently. And Carlos is attacking that Kimura again, but he can't hold on to it.
Joe, we had said it earlier, when the stars align and you get a matchup like this, we are truly blessed, and what a matchup it has been.
It is everything we thought it was going to be.
And more so. Final 30 seconds of the fourth round.
And it's really being decided so far by George's grappling. Although the most exciting moment came from Carlos' striking. Carlos again with feet on the hips.
Final seconds of the round.
Again, back to his feet.
St. Pierre looking for his 7th tonight, which would be 7 in a row. Matt Hughes, 9-3 in championship fights. George St. Pierre, 9-2 going into this battle. So if you want to truly claim that you are the greatest welterweight champion in UFC history, you can do so tonight by going 10-2 in championship fights and surpassing Hughes, the Hall of Famer.
Beautiful combination there by GSP. The left hook with the right leg kick. Now Carlos is opening up.
Winkle John, the world champion kickboxer, said you have got to leave it all in there and finish him here. Sure, he feels they are down 3-1.
Oh, nice spinning back kick by Condit. Didn't get full extension on it.
You know, you got to talk about, Joe, our cut men that are working both corners. Both of these guys bloodied up, but neither dripping right now. A great job done. Looking for another one. He got it.
George,
6 for 6.
Carlos has a switch on him, though, Mike. See that right hand deep in? He lost it. George keeps on that leg. Carlos is free and side kicks him away. Excellent defensive side kick.
This is the most
right
punishment St. Pierre has taken in a long time.
He tagged him with that right hand.
Looking for that Anderson Silva kick, the Lyoto Machida kick. The Spider watching very closely.
Good right hand by Carlos. Nice straight left by Carlos.
Just over 3 minutes remain in our main event of the evening. First fight in nearly 19 months for St. Pierre.
Again, he goes high with that kick.
That one off the arms. Nice left hand. St. Pierre 6 for 6 in his takedowns tonight. Looking for the uppercut. Past the midway point of the 5th and final round. St. Pierre 9-0 in fights that go the distance. Stiff jab. Double jab, followed up by a big right hand. St. Pierre looking for the finish still.
Takes him down again. He's in full mount. Nope. Carlos sneaks the legs up. And George steps over, half guard. Gets a head and arm here. Let's see if he can get that leg free and mount.
Carlos got his back off the cage, Joe, but he may remain on his back for the rest of this fight if St. Pierre has his way trying to solidify the victory.
Carlos got the left hand on the hip and he's trying to sneak his left leg up. And George is pressing down on the shin, his right shin on the thigh, so I believe he's probably trying to free that leg up and perhaps move to mount.
Under 90 seconds remain.
Yeah, he's trying to mount. He's going to try to slide that leg out. Here it comes. Nope, Carlos gets it right back in.
But Carlos needs to get up and do something, Joe.
He certainly does.
7 for 7. For the man who has landed more takedowns efficiently than anyone in UFC history.
He got impatient there, Mike. He gave up his back.
Trying to slide out of trouble.
He rolls.
George is just
great rolling.
He's like a huge magnet on him right now. body.
Well, Carlos gave up his back there, and George wasn't able to capitalize. Carlos is just trying to make anything happen here.
He had to overcome the worst injury of his career and one of the most, if not the most difficult opponent. St. Pierre working his way towards victory. They are on their feet, 20,000 plus, including the longtime middleweight champion Anderson Silva.
Carlos again trying for that Kimura on the left arm, but he's got to
10 seconds remain. Big elbows by the champion. And they go the distance. What a fight. What a fight. How about greatly surpassed any expectations?
That was an outstanding fight. Carlos had his moment. He really did. He had that one moment where George was in big, big trouble, but George showed what a champion's all about. And it's really interesting because a lot of people question whether or not George would be able to get through a situation of adversity, get through a situation where he's badly hurt, and boy, he showed that tonight.
Fight replay brought to you by Bud Light. Here we go. Takedown after takedown.
There's
big
the
elbow.
big cut in the first that really got things going for George. And there's a nice right hand by George. But this kick in the second round, which really, the third round, which really changed things. And that was about as hurt as we've seen George St. Pierre since he lost the title to Matt Serra.
Absolutely.
And Carlos was all over him, grounding and pounding him. But George, again, utilized his wrestling, turned the tide. And here again, the wrestling of George. Over and over and over again. There's a vicious elbow from the top. And then finally, in the fifth and championships, look at that, beautiful flying jab, Superman jab, and a big right hand by George there.
Ladies and gentlemen, after 5 rounds, we go to the judges' scorecards for a decision. The judges score this contest 49-46, 50-45, and 50-45, declaring the winner by unanimous decision, Logan